What is up, everybody? It is Tuesday afternoon here on the West Coast. There's been a slew of quotes from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan over the last 48 hours. I just wanted to circle back and touch on. For those of you who are new, I just got this channel up and running, so I appreciate any liking and subscribing, sharing. Anything to help get the word out is greatly appreciated. I'm attempting to do streams every single day breaking down 49ers news. So far I've been able to do that, and any support going forward is greatly appreciated. So essentially right now what you have is the entire NFL brass is down in Florida at these owner meetings. You have owners, GMs, coaches. You got everybody in the same, room, for lack of a better term, for a few days. So you're getting this media availability to ask questions. You're going to hear a lot of different viewpoints, different analysis on things. But of course, with the 49ers, it's always going to come back to the quarterback position. And you can tell that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are kind of burnt out on these questions. But again, that's of their own doing. So it's kind of like the old adage, you make your bed, you lie in it. So I wanted to touch on quickly, for those who might have missed it, yesterday, John Lynch was asked if there was a scenario where Jimmy Garoppolo could be released if they can't find a trade partner. John Lynch responded by saying he doesn't foresee that happening. And again, that's the word that we have to really circle, highlight, whatever you want to call it. Saying foresee gives him a little bit of wiggle room to say, well, yeah, we like the player a lot. We didn't think that it was a situation that would happen, but things change. Situations are fluid. He didn't outright say, no, we won't do it. He didn't say, yes, we will do it. He said, we will not. We don't foresee this happening. So the way I look at this is the 49ers are continuing to be in a spot of not trying to burn out any leverage that they have left. They may have none, but at this point, it serves them nothing to sit here and say that their time with Jimmy Garoppolo is done. They're trying to trade him, and if they can't, they're just going to dump him. It doesn't really serve to assist in any kind of leverage for a negotiation that they might be having with other teams. So John Lynch basically just came out and was consistent with how he's been. He said all the great things about Jimmy, how they like him as a player, they like him as a leader. He's too good of a player to foresee them being cut. So we're at a spot now where what's going on behind the scenes is what's really important. And the unfortunate thing for fans is that we don't know what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are telling Trey Lance. We don't know what they're telling Jimmy Garoppolo, but we can come away with what they've told the media and pretty confidently know that it's not necessarily anything more than them just posturing. Like, that's to me what it is. It's just posturing, knowing that if you do want to have any kind of hope at having somebody trade something for Jimmy Garoppolo, you're going to have to maintain this facade, or even if you really believe it, but you have to at least portray that you believe he's the guy and you believe that he's this person that you make him out to be, this good quarterback, this great leader, all these things. And if you just outright cut him for nothing, it kind of takes away from all that value you've tried to build up in these negotiations. So pretty much John Lynch stayed consistent. Nothing's really changed. What I thought was interesting today was that Kyle Shanahan was a bit more upfront about the fact that they do believe Trey Lance has come along, and they do think that the plan is still looking like giving Trey Lance the keys to the car, for lack of a better phrasing. He didn't say specifically Trey Lance will be the starter. He didn't say that Trey's our guy no matter what. But I was very encouraged with what Kyle Shanahan had to say today, because it was the most direct statement we've really heard to this point about Trey Lance being that guy going forward. So when he was asked about it, Kyle Shanahan responded by saying, that's why we looked into traded Jimmy. That's why we looked into moving him. It's no secret they've done it. Jimmy said outright at his farewell press conference, yeah, the 49ers are going to help. They're going to assist as we look for a trade partner. It obviously didn't happen. But Kyle came out and pretty much said what their actions have backed up and said, hey, that's why we looked into trading Jimmy. That's why we traded all these picks. We believe that Trey Lance can be the starter. The word he used specifically was, we believe Trey can be a starter. We're ready to do that. But if we can't upgrade our team in another way, and what he means by that is via draft pick compensation in exchange for Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not just going to dump Jimmy for nothing. They still believe he's a good quarterback. He mentioned that quarterbacks are really hard to come by. Some teams don't have any. And it was so funny because anybody who watched the stream yesterday, I was like, watch, they're going to find a way to work Nate Sudfeld into this too and talk about how much they love Nate Sudfeld and how Nate Sudfeld is an asset that they covet as well. And Kyle goes, and the fact that we have 3 that we're happy with, that's a good thing. So I loved that Kyle found a way to work in Nate Sudfeld because it's becoming so predictable at this point how some of these press conferences get worded. So when we look at this, Kyle goes, you always want to upgrade your team, and usually one guy could play, and we know that we have all guys that are capable of starting. So he's basically saying that we believe that Nate Sudfeld, Trey Lance, or Jimmy Garoppolo could all start. That's what he's saying. Maybe he really believes it. I think the case could be made pretty easy for Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo. Nate Sudfeld is an interesting one. I think he throws the ball a lot better than people give him credit for. I got to see him in extensive action at training camp, and I'm like, hey, man, Nate Sudfeld could sling that rock. Like, that dude's got a decent arm. I don't think he gets enough credit. I'm not sitting here, advocating for him to start for the 49ers by any means, but I'm just saying I think that he gets a little more disrespect than maybe he deserves. That dude's got a nice arm, man. He can throw that ball around. So Kyle talked about how Jimmy's done a great job starting for them, but they brought Trey in to do that eventually, and he thinks that it will be sooner rather than later, right? So first off, yes, like you'd like to think, like I made a joke about on Twitter earlier, you'd like to think that trading 3 years worth of first-round picks for a quarterback would mean that you'd think they'd be starting for you sooner rather than later. You'd certainly hope that would be the case. So I, for one, am very relieved that their plan wasn't just to trade 3 first-round picks for a guy who might not start for them. So thank you, Kyle Shanahan, for clearing that up for us. But on a more serious note, he did mention that the surgery was something that slowed this down. And John Lynch said that yesterday. So ultimately, maybe this whole scenario plays out differently if Jimmy doesn't get hurt in the playoffs. He doesn't have to get that shoulder surgery. Maybe he's in Indianapolis. Maybe he went to one of these other teams. Unfortunately, where we are now, they're going to hang on to Jimmy until they can get something for him. And that's become very clear. I'm going to dive into a couple of the other quotes he had too. He did also mention that they do budget for these things. They have looked at scenarios where Jimmy stays on the team. They have looked at all these things. But again, the comments about Trey starting sooner rather than later, that's something we haven't really heard from Kyle. Everything's been about QB competition and been about, well, Jimmy's the guy for now, and we like Trey, but they haven't come out and said stuff about him really coming out and starting. One other thing that I thought was interesting was Kyle said that Jimmy's a good player. We really like as a person and teammate, and we're going to wait and see what helps the Niners the most. And again, what he's saying with that is pretty much if we can get draft pick compensation, we're going to get draft picks back. And if we can't, we'll probably end up maybe keeping him on the roster. Maybe they have him as a backup. I don't know. That whole situation gets really, really muddied very fast. So expanding on that a little bit, it's getting to the point where let's talk about if there's a potential where Jimmy stays on this roster, right? Like they've said clearly the plan is for Trey Lance to be the guy. They drafted him number 3 overall. They invested 3 years worth of first round picks into him. For Jimmy Garoppolo to stay on the team and enter a QB competition, you'd have to think like this is not what was in their plans. And pretty much everything that they were hoping to do this offseason didn't go according to plan and according to the way they wanted to do it. So I'm looking at this as, yes, it may not be great from an optics standpoint, but ultimately, if Trey Lance is the guy that I believe he is from what I've seen, from what a lot of fans believe, and from what the 49ers make it sound like they believe, I don't think necessarily it's the worst thing in the world should he have to beat out Jimmy Garoppolo in a quarterback competition. Should they have that? Kyle did mention too, he said very clearly, he said Jimmy beat Trey out last year. So maybe there was more to this quarterback competition that we were, told wasn't a competition, or we're told it was always Jimmy's thing all along. Kyle said he beat Trey out. Those words came out of Kyle's mouth today. And he also said that I think it would be much closer this year. So they've clearly seen enough from Trey Lance in the last year that make them believe that he's ready to take that leap. I think that ultimately what this is going to come down to is really just how does that shoulder heal? How does Jimmy Garoppolo respond to his rehab process? Is he able to come in, pass a physical, throw a football around? Because I still think somebody might trade something for him. But again, if we get to a point where it's him hanging around, like, I just think this whole situation is like, it's less than ideal, right? It's something that should never have happened, and it's something that should have been cleaned up a long time ago. So realistically, it's going to get spun as this iron sharpens iron thing. It's going to get spun as this, we're here to make each other better. This is about competition, and competition breeds success and all that stuff. It shouldn't have to happen that way. You gave Nate Sudfeld $2 million in guaranteed money. You drafted Trey Lance at number 3. Like, the plan should be very clearly to move on and have Trey Lance be that guy moving forward. But I just think that at this point, the most concerning thing about all of this is the last quote I'll get to is Jed York talked, and he mentioned that the 49ers brass, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, have the authority to put the roster together as they see fit. If that's what it is, as long as we're competing and winning football games, they have the ability to do what they think is best to help us win. He's basically saying if they think their best chance to win is to keep Jimmy on the roster, he supports doing it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's willing to eat the salary that Jimmy's being paid. From an optics standpoint, it looks really, really bad to have a $25 million backup on the roster. And it looks really bad to have the guy you drafted number 3 not beat out the guy you drafted him to replace in back-to-back seasons. So the 49ers are really setting themselves up for a scenario where no matter what they do here going forward, they're kind of putting themselves in a bad spot. So I just think ultimately, again, the thing that I take away from today is that Kyle Shanahan really did voice for the first time publicly, it felt like, that Trey Lance is not only the guy going forward, but he's ready for that jump. And he's seen enough in this last year that they're ready to make that move. He also echoed what we all pretty much know on our own is that, they tried to trade Jimmy. They tried to move him. Didn't work out because of the shoulder. And they're also not going to just cut him for nothing. So, realistically, there's not much else to talk about with this. It's pretty much Kyle's coming out and voicing support for Trey Lance. He's making it very clear that they are going to have to see the end product of the investment they made soon, but they're also not going to give up their incumbent quarterback for nothing. And they're not just going to cut Jimmy to free up cap space. They're not just going to cut Jimmy for the sake of cutting him. As much as I may think that's the more prudent move to avoid 4 months of outside noise and speculation and all the things that will come from this, it doesn't seem like that's within their plan. So those are kind of just some of my quick thoughts on it. If you guys have questions or anything about that, I'll try to get to those really quick. This definitely is not going to be a 5-hour, 2-hour, whatever stream. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. So if you guys have any things you guys want to talk about, I'll get to it. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Unfortunately, Diego, no 5-hour stream today. I don't think I have that in me. I don't think I have enough to talk about to go for 5 hours today, to be honest. Appreciate that, CJ. Jay, what's going on, dude? I'm not gonna lie. Maybe this is just my goofy attitude. My favorite outfit from that picture was Ron Rivera in the customized Hawaiian shirt, with the little Washington football team or Commanders or whatever the heck they're called now, the logo on it. I like Ron Rivera's. That's just kind of my thing. If you're gonna be out there in South Florida, might as well hang out a little bit. I wasn't a big fan of Sean McVay. I know a lot of people were saying Sean McVay had the most drip out of everybody. I'm not a big fan of the light blue shirt and the jeans like that, man. I thought that, if you're going to do that, you could wear some slacks, you could wear something it's not for me. We're talking about Kyle. Kyle dresses like every surf dad that I've ever known. He shops like a guy that skated and surfed in his younger years and only knows how to buy clothes from PacSun and wears Volcom and DC and Vans and stuff, that's how, dude, I'm literally wearing a Ruka shirt right now. I'm not hating in the slightest. I totally get it. So it cracks me up that even Kyle Shanahan's dress shirts look like what you'd see a surf dude wear at a formal event. It's you ask somebody who's in that scene to come and go to a formal event. Kyle Shanahan's just dressing this he has an exclusive deal with PacSun or something like that. So I think that that's kind of funny. So if we're ranking drip, that's kind of where I'm at. I love Mike McDaniel too. If you guys didn't see, Mike McDaniel had on the like tank top with the tan pants and the like blue dress shirt. Cliff Kingsbury's probably the best dress coach in the league, if we're being honest. I think he's the most like up to date. I didn't see we couldn't see because he was in the back, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Pete Carroll was wearing his Air Monarch. So maybe we'll do an episode later on that. We'll rank all the coaches drip and we'll give them a better we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and not just focus on what they wore this one thing. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was extremely disappointed with a lot of the lack of drip that I saw from these guys that are making millions of dollars a year. He just says after the draft we should cut. Yeah, you see, I totally get that, dude. I just think the Niners are pretty steadfast in their belief that they're not gonna move Jimmy for nothing. They think he has value, and whether they're right or wrong, they have come this far. They're gonna stand by it. So, as much as we may disagree or may think that that's not the most prudent path to optimizing this current season, they've made it clear that's what they're gonna do. And I respect the fact that they're not backtracking and wavering. Like they're pretty right or wrong. They're standing by their convictions on this one. So I haven't seen this too much, but I wouldn't put too much stock into it. I think that the hard part about covering all 32 NFL teams is that you're not going to get the pulse of each team the way you would from local beat writers. And I think the local beat writers have done a fantastic job lately covering all this and covering this quarterback stuff. So I think that that's who I would rely on more. I understand it's frustrating to see people seemingly doubt Trey Lance over and over again. I think that's just a situation where he's going to have to unfortunately push through, but I think he has the chance to silence a lot of people when he gets on the football field. And I think there's a very good chance he does that. This is something I wanted to mention too before I get out of here. Justin makes a great point. So Kyle mentioned that Jimmy isn't the best at communicating in the offseason. And it's funny because we've heard the jokes for years from like George Kittle, where like Kittle talks about how Jimmy doesn't text him back and he doesn't answer his phone and all these things. And Kyle said that him and Jimmy haven't been in contact very often, but he and Trey Lance have been in contact regularly. I know that I think it was a charity event. I apologize. I'm blanking on what the event was, but I know they had a picture together about a week ago with 24K Golden at some sort of event. So Kyle and Trey seem to be in this, symbiotic understanding where he's going to be the guy going forward, and he's taken a leap from August of last year till now, and he needs to take a leap from March, where we are right now, going into April, into training camp. And that's where you're seeing these reports. Trey Lance was working out with John Beck and Brandon Ayuk. I believe Sudfeld was there too, and they're throwing in Southern California. So there seems to be an understanding. And regardless of what they think of Jimmy or what the speculation is, Jimmy can't throw for 4 months, 3.5 more months. Trey is going to be taking those first team reps at OTAs. He's going to be taking the first team reps at off-season programs and all these things they're doing. So he has a great chance to kind of get this stranglehold on the job. And I don't think it's going to be a scenario where, it's like it's Jimmy's job last year, so it's his job to lose now. Like if Trey comes in and he balls out during OTAs and he's hitting the right progressions, he's working within the proper timing of the offense, he's showing off that arm and that physical ability, I have every reason to believe that it's his job to lose, even if Jimmy does enter some sort of competition with him. And Trey's the guy who has the leg up. Because to me, last year, it was always very hard to envision a scenario where Trey would start week 1 based simply on the fact it was Jimmy's job to lose. I think this year the roles will be reversed if we even get to that quarterback competition. And I think that does go a very long way in all of this. Yes, this is a channel where we respect Nate Sudfeld. Nate Sudfeld is a much better quarterback than he gets credit for. He is a viable backup. QB1, I don't know about that, Mariah. That's a bold statement. I don't know. I don't know if I could go that far. Nate the Great. Hey, we like Nate Sudfeld on this channel. Just throwing that out there. Brian says the Niners are doing what they want. They will not be told they're wrong. At this point, they're standing by it. And we can't really make a final judgment on things until this all plays out, because maybe they end up getting a decent pick for Jimmy down the line. Maybe they still work some extensions. Maybe they still find a way to sign guys. I think the biggest thing to talk about with all this is that John Lynch said that they were planning on being a little bit more conservative in free agency, and that their one big bite, as he called it, was Tarvarius Ward, the cornerback signing they made. It's easy to say that given the circumstances. None of us really know if that would have been the plan, because while there's no guarantee that the 49ers would have spent a bunch of money if Jimmy wasn't on the roster, there is a guarantee that it would have been much easier to spend that money. Even if they weren't going out and signing a bunch of big name guys and spending these big splash signings, they could have added a few other pieces at that middle tier where you're not coming in, around veteran minimums and a lot of the deals they've been signing. They could have brought a few guys in for $4 or $5 million a year. And that's where it gets interesting because John Lynch is saying that their plan wasn't to go out and sign a bunch of big name guys. He said something along the lines of, we've been all gas, no brakes, popular saying in that 49ers organization when it comes to free agency signings. And it's true. In the majority of the years, they brought in Sherman in 2018. They brought in Quan Alexander and D Ford in 2019. They brought in Garcon and Juszczyk and these guys in 2017. Like, they've gone out and they've spent a decent amount of money in the majority of the off seasons they've been here. They obviously inked Trent Williams to a big extension last off season. It wasn't free. It wasn't the same because he was on the team before, but they still did sign him in unrestricted free agency to a big contract. So I understand what Kyle's saying, or sorry, not Kyle, but John is saying, and he's basically saying that their plan wasn't to do that all along. But if we follow up on that, it's impossible to deny that it wouldn't have been easier to maybe fit an additional signing or two in there based on the fact you have $25 extra million to play with. I don't think there's any way anybody could argue otherwise. And hey, maybe they would have just sat on that money, saved it for extensions, but it would have made life easier. And I think that's the biggest thing, is coming back to John Lynch ended one of his statements yesterday with, hey, we'll make it work. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm an optimist. I've gotten myself into a few pickles before, and I've tried to, be a problem solver. I love telling people, hey, we'll make it work. Usually when I'm saying that, things aren't going according to plan, and they're not going the way that it would be ideal for everyone involved. But I'm like, hey, don't worry. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Like, that to me was very telling, that it didn't necessarily back up with what he had been saying about them not being, aggressive and wanting to spend more money. Because I think there were areas to improve. One thing, I know it doesn't excite people. I do think John Lynch's comments about the special teams was very telling as well. It was implied, I believe it was about special teams. He said that they looked at areas they needed to get better, and they were very aggressive in doing so. So they addressed the cornerback position, and they added 3 really, really good special teams players, one of whom was an all-pro special teamer, the other who led the league in return yardage. So for me, as much as it's not this glamorous thing to talk about, it really didn't get talked about enough that how bad the 49ers special teams was last year. So while I understand fans want to see Chandler Jones and Stephon Gilmore getting signed, like those are the big names that are going to excite you, signings like Odom and Burks and McLeod, those are things that are going to make the 49ers a more complete football team. And when you already have a strong roster like the 49ers do, sometimes those little signings are really what's going to put them over the top. And I just thought that it was a big moment of growth in my eyes, that instead of being stubborn and just saying, hey, it was a down year, we'll get better on special teams, we'll change up some things on the coaching staff. They looked in the mirror and they were like, hey, we didn't construct this team well enough from a special team standpoint. We didn't get enough guys on this roster that can be impact players on special teams. We're going to aggressively go after those. And I'll end that on, the only time people ever want to talk about special teams is when it costs the team a game. When, think about the Packers, right? The Packers were, last in the league in special teams. They're the only unit in the league that was ranked worse than the 49ers in special teams. Going into that game in San Francisco, very few people, I wrote a little bit about it, but very few people were talking about how special teams might decide that outcome. If you listen to the Packers content coming out that week, none of them talked about how San Francisco might be in that game because of special teams. It was all Aaron Rodgers and like that offense was going to be too much, and that they didn't really give the 49ers a chance. The 49ers won that game because Jordan Willis blocked a field goal and he blocked a punt. If those two things don't happen, they don't win that game. So while these signings, again, aren't going to excite people now, special teams is ultimately what kept the Packers out of potentially going on a Super Bowl run. And that's the thing for the 49ers. I thought they were proactive enough to make signings that will put them in a position where we're not sitting here a year from now talking about how this team was loaded everywhere, but they allowed a blocked punt or a returned kickoff to cost them a chance at pursuing a Super Bowl. So I just want to throw that out there. I think that that's something that doesn't get enough love. Special teams does matter too. Don't let Jason Aponte sway you too much. Punters are people. They deserve respect from all of us too. So I'm going to go down and see if I have any other questions or anything too. 1 second. If you guys do have anything you want to talk about, topics you were concerned about, we can talk about that. I'm going to work backwards and go back up so that I can get to what is recent. Ryan says she's excited about the special team signings. She talked about how on her show, which is great. Please go follow the Faithfully podcast. She talked about how necessary it was for them to make some changes there. So I think that that's something that was definitely a good point. I'm with Eric here. I wanted a tight end too as well. No disrespect to Ross Dwelly, but now I'm kind of like, all right, well, they're probably not going to make a big move. Maybe they draft a guy, maybe they do something, but they have Dwelly, they have Warner, they have Kittle, they have Jordan Matthews, who is, the Dante Johnson of the 49ers offense, where it feels like every offseason you can count on him making a cameo appearance at some point. I think that they would have been far better off to go out and aggressively pursue a high-end tight end too. I think that what we saw Kyle and what he was able to do out of 2 tight end sets was very, very impressive. And I thought that was something that would have given defenses a very difficult time. So I'm with you there. I would have really liked to see that. I think that it's just the ship sailed on enough. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they like a guy in the draft. I do think there's a couple guys in the draft. On that topic, I'm going to start doing some draft content with some draft experts here pretty soon. So if you guys are into that, definitely have notifications on. I'll try to give some notice on my Twitter and social media and stuff like that. But we will start doing some draft stuff because there are some pretty good tight ends and some players who would fit in great on this 49ers team. But Eric, on point as usual. I agree. Tight end 2 was a need. John, what is going on, dude? John thinks that Kyle and John are the best and worst liars. Like I talked about it a bunch yesterday. John Lynch would be a great politician. I think that he is really good at just covering all the bases and really good at just, you can't really come back and hit him with, oh, well, you said this or you said that. You can't box him into a corner because he's really good at just laying out every possible scenario and talking about due diligence and how they cover their bases and how they checked in on this and checked in on that. It may be frustrating to watch, but it's actually really impressive to me when you're looking at it from a PR standpoint that this guy's able to cover as many bases as he does. Let me see. CJ says that Jimmy's presence is toxic because of past biases. It creates an unnecessary divide in my eyes because a lot of the love you've heard for Jimmy Garoppolo, it's very genuine. Like, people like Jimmy Garoppolo, the teammate. They respect Jimmy Garoppolo, the player. And it's not just players. It's fans. It's people in the front office. You have to believe coaching. Like, it creates a very unnecessary split. And to me, ultimately, what John and Kyle decide to do matters more than anything, but not everybody's going to be on board with moving up to get a Trey Lance. I'm sure there were some people who were felt some type of way that they went and they made a move to replace Jimmy like that. And unfortunately, that presence alone, it's not like Jimmy himself is a toxic person. And I think that's the point CJ is trying to make. And I agree with that. I don't think that we've heard anything about Jimmy, the person, that would make you believe he is a toxic teammate. He's bad leader. He's somebody that you don't want to be around. It's just this situation has breeded a level of uncomfortability because it's like he's so likable that he became a toxic figure because it's so hard to part with somebody like that, if that makes sense. And I know that sounds like crazy, but it's almost like he was such a good dude that it makes it worse. Like, this would be a much easier thing if he was like a decent quarterback, not a great guy. The fact that he is such a great person and people respond to him so well, that makes this situation that much more difficult to move on from. So, Ryu says it's competition. Everyone looks over your shoulder. If you're scared, pick a different sport. Hey, I'm with you on that. If it ultimately comes down to that, if Trey Lance can't beat out Jimmy Garoppolo in training camp, then the 49ers have much bigger problems. If Trey Lance is a guy in his second year that isn't able to beat out the guy he was drafted to replace, the 49ers have much bigger issues than worrying about some little quarterback controversy or whose feelings are going to be hurt or swayed or any of that stuff. And I have zero reason to believe he can't until we get to that point. So I agree. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I just think that it's avoidable. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is it never needed to come to that. And that's the biggest takeaway from all of this for me, is that we didn't need to get to a point where it does turn into a competition in the second year. Never had to go that way. It's looking like it might go that way. So again, it's not the end of the world. It's just something that was easily avoidable. And we can kind of see it it's like a slow moving, like you're like driving down the street and there's like a brick wall in front of you and you just can't slam on the brakes. You're going to hit it eventually, but like you can't do anything now to stop it. That's kind of the point we're at, where it feels like the 49ers can get out of that car, but instead they're content just riding it out. And I think that's the biggest problem right now, is that we all see the path that this is evolving down. And it's just kind of like they're in a holding pattern in the meantime until then. Shardall said that Matt Rule looked disheveled in that pick. He knows he's on death row because he's on the hot seat. I think that, he's on the hottest seat of anybody in the NFL. And right now his hopes hinge on Sam Darnold being a good quarterback. So I can't really blame him for not being the happiest guy in the world right now. But that's a great comment. Nicholas said that he liked Kyle's comments on Trey. It feels like they're really confident with him. And I know they have to display that feeling, but I think it's genuine. I agree 1000%. And this is why I feel that way, because we didn't hear that at all throughout last season. Like, we didn't hear anything close to what we heard today when it came to Trey Lance. And maybe they felt that way behind closed doors. Maybe they were just trying not to stir up controversy because they knew Jimmy was probably going to finish out that season. But we heard it from players. We heard it from, we saw the videos. We saw the leaked practice videos. Most of you guys saw it. If you haven't, hit YouTube up right now. Go look in the thing, the search bar. The guy's got the talent. So they clearly are comfortable now coming out and saying it. And again, a lot of times I think people just think that things get said purely for PR. It's like, oh, what are they supposed to say? That Trey Lance is a bust and they missed? Like, they could just not say anything. And that's kind of what they've done to this point. So the fact that they're willing to say something does say a lot to me as well. I agree, Nicholas. I think that is a very, very good point. Let's see what else we have. I understand it's not typical, but why do people act like you can't sit your rookie year if you're not a quarterback? I think Banks will be good. Well, so this is the problem, is that in 2011, the CBA changed and rookie contracts became very cheap. They became very affordable. And I think people have it in their head that if you're not getting on the field as a rookie, it's a waste of time. We've seen a lot of players come and make big impacts their rookie season. But I agree with this entirely. If a quarterback does it, it's like, hey, well, he's just sitting here learning. Well, other positions you need to learn too. Other positions you need to get comfortable playing too. It's not just quarterbacks. I think with Banks too, had he been healthy the entire season and not seen the field at all, I would have been much more concerned. He had injuries that stunted his growth in the preseason. He was changing positions. There were just so many moving parts that I don't think that it's an indictment necessarily that he didn't play. I also think the coaching staff is much higher on Daniel Brunskill and, than a lot of the fans are. And who else was he going to beat out? Laken Tomlinson made a Pro Bowl. Alex Mack is phenomenal. Who else is Aaron Banks going to take out on that interior offensive line? It just didn't make sense. So if Brunskill had missed time and we saw, like a practice squad guy jump Banks, or we saw something like that happen, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a little bit of a cause for concern. Daniel Brunskill is a good football player, and he's much, much better than he gets credit for from the majority of fans who I see voice opinions on him. So I'm not concerned in the slightest. In fact, in my eyes, the best case scenario is to have Trent Williams at left tackle, Aaron Banks at left guard, Mack at center, Brunskill at right guard, and then McGlinchey at right tackle. I still think having Banks and Brunskill as your starting guards is a very optimal place to be. I think that that's something the 49ers can have a lot of success with. So I think that's a great point, Lalo. A lot of people are just quick to write players off. My general rule is 3 years. Unless you see something that's like really, really blatantly obvious where you can kind of tell sooner, I think 3 years is a fair time frame to assess a player and whether or not they are a bust or not in the NFL. It's so hard to know right off the bat if a guy's going to be a star, and it's really hard to know right off the bat if a player is going to be good. It's going to take time to get better. So that's a great point. Don't write players off just because they're a non-quarterback and they didn't get on the field year one. We've seen too many instances where a player is able to get that second year leap, third year leap. And I don't think there's any reason to write off players like Banks. And that's even guys like Javon Kinlaw. Like, a lot of people are lower on Kinlaw because he's been injured and hasn't been able to stay on the field. I've been so steadfast in my belief that I think he's going to be an impact player and he's really good. And Kyle said today he looks the best that he's seen him since they brought him into the organization 2 years ago. So patience, sometimes it's hard. I get it. It's really hard, but sometimes patience really is the best thing we can have with these things, because down the line, you'll see that maybe all it did take was a couple years to get adjusted. Maybe all it did take was an off-season program to really turn things around. Yes, I believe Matthews is still under contract. I haven't done double check, but I'm almost positive he's still there. Let's see. Jimmy is a backup. Hey, I made that joke too. Last time Jimmy was holding a clipboard, his team was winning the Super Bowl. So I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe if the 49ers are superstitious, they will pay the $25 million to have Jimmy on the sidelines, because he was holding that clipboard on the way to a couple Super Bowl titles in New England. So maybe they can find the same recipe for success here. Mariah says she thinks Kyle said a lot for being Kyle. I agree too. Usually Kyle's very cryptic. He's very he doesn't mince words. He's very reserved. And I thought he came out and he made it very clear. He didn't do anything to alter John Lynch's comments. He didn't do anything that would make what John Lynch said yesterday sound incorrect or false. He did a good job staying in lockstep with those Jimmy Garoppolo comments, but he also came out and made a lot of positive comments about Trey Lance that hasn't been the norm for him or the team up to this point. And I think, again, it's at the point where, hey, they made those picks. They made that decision to move up and get him. They made that investment. It's time to see it out, man. You got to get it on the field. You got to see the product that you're going to get from that investment. And you have to start by building this guy up in the offseason, getting him those first team reps, getting him working out with these guys on the team. And I think all the signs we're seeing are pointing to Trey Lance being the guy. So realistically, people are still going to come back to, well, if Jimmy's on the team, he's going to start, and the 49ers can't get rid of Jimmy, and Jimmy's going to be the guy in camp. I think all things equal, if you put Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo through the same quarterback competition, I think Trey Lance is coming out on top this year. And I just think the physical gifts at this point will outweigh the experience gap that was there last training camp. I understood totally why Jimmy started week 1. I missed like 2 training camp practices, but I was there for pretty much all of them. And it made sense to me because as much as Trey Lance wowed me with his physical abilities, there was a clear need to get up to speed with some of the other things, clock management, situational offense, things like that. I think Trey's had more than enough time to get acclimated with that stuff. And I think at this point, the physical gifts will ultimately separate them. Sticking to competition, Emiliano says he doesn't mind competition. It's just that the QB competition takes away first team reps from a particular QB who lacks a ton of reps and needs them. So that could make the QB comp inherently unfair. That's my thing too. Trey Lance is the guy. He needs all the reps he can get as possible. So it's a situation to me where, again, I don't foresee it really playing out like that. And I don't think that Trey Lance showed anything in his first year that would make me pause and be like, man, they might have really whiffed on this. And if they put Trey Lance out there, they're a 5-win team and they just got rid of a proven winner who was in the NFC Championship game just last season. I don't think that's a situation that they're really concerned with. Again, I think it's more so just they value Jimmy to a certain extent, and they don't believe in letting a quarterback that they think has value go for nothing, which does make sense to me too. Like I get it. CJ says Jimmy could go back up somewhere else. He might have to, man. I've mentioned he might have to do what Mitch Trubisky did. Mitch Trubisky, I think Baker's in the same boat. Trubisky went from starting in Chicago, was number 2 overall pick, had to go to Buffalo for a year and kind of rebuild his value. Ran the scout team there, held a clipboard, sat behind Josh Allen. And now he has a starting gig in Pittsburgh. I think that quarterback carousel is going to turn next year, not as abruptly and swiftly as it did this year. But maybe Jimmy does have to go back up somewhere for a year, and then he can establish his value again on the open market. Mariota had to do the same thing. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Eddie G, what's going on, dude? Eddie's asking, what position do we address at 61? I still think it's going to be edge, guys. I still think that they're going to draft a defensive lineman, and people are going to be like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this team, they did it again. They went edge. They took a defensive lineman with their first pick. I don't think it's the worst strategy in the world. If we go back to 2019 and this past season, the 2 years that the 49ers have had the most success under this current regime, the defensive line has really been the driving factor. Sure, we've seen, that offense was pretty explosive in 2019. We saw Deebo Samuel be this superstar transcendent talent. But to me, what really was the engine propelling that team in both those seasons was this ferocious pass rush that went 7-8 players deep, a really strong rotation of good players that you can throw out there. And I think right now, as much as I like Samson Ebukam, I think that the signings they have made, I like them for the most part. I don't think that they necessarily should be done, but I do think that like Kerry Hyder, like a guy like that, high energy guy, high motor, bring a guy like Kevin Givens back. There's a lot to like. Charles Omenihu, Jordan Willis, like they have a good rotation of players there. But what they really, in my opinion, would do good in searching for is finding a natural speed rusher with that great bend, that great get off the edge that we saw from Dee Ford. They made it kind of clear Dee Ford's time with the 49ers is probably coming to an end, which I think is unfortunate because injuries really prevented him from being a huge difference maker for this team beyond just that 2019 season where he was a big difference maker. And I think that they would do really well in a situation where they can address that and add a guy that has that mold. That's why last year I really liked Azeez Ojulari, who ended up on the Giants. I thought he would have been fantastic, and the 49ers passed on him twice in the second round, and I'm still sitting here and kind of shaking my head at it because I'm like, dude, he literally would have been perfect for this team and for this role. They didn't do it. It is what it is. You can't cry over spilled milk, right? But I think it'll be edge at 61, and this is my thinking. If it's not edge, I think it'll probably be safety. I think that they'll look at one of the safeties if maybe they fall, and then the third thing is maybe they see an offensive lineman they really, really like there that they can't pass on. Maybe they sit for a year. Maybe they develop. Because, again, we have to remember that when you're at the back end of the second round like that, like, sure, you can find impact players. They absolutely are there. It's not a given that the player they take at 61 is going to see the field right away. This is a really good football team, and maybe they do take a guy that they're going to have to draft, develop, have sit for a year. And I think that expectation is really important to consider going into this, that it's not like they're picking 8th overall, 9th overall, where this player should see the field right away. You're picking at the back end of the second round. Odds are the guy you get is going to have a pretty rough path to getting to a starting role right away, unless they luck out and hit a home run with the pick, or unless circumstances change on the depth chart that's already pretty loaded for them. I agree. D Ford not coming back is unfortunate. I'm sure D Ford feels the same way. It's a situation where, I see a lot of really just kind of it's beyond disrespectful. It's disappointing. A lot of the things I see get said about players who are injured and who are dealing with injuries like that, these guys don't choose to get hurt, man. Like, I just think it's absurd that, there's a level of disdain and hate for players like that just doesn't add up. Without D Ford, the 49ers don't make it to the Super Bowl in 2019. Sure, they didn't win it. I get it. It's not the same as being Super Bowl champions, but to me, if you're a fan of this team and you enjoyed that season, you enjoyed that ride, it doesn't happen without D Ford. So to sit here and the names I see him get called and people adding him on social media and stuff like that, it's disgusting, man. And it's not the way I think 49ers fans for the most part are. And I think it's really unfortunate that it does get, it makes a lot of the fan base upset, I would imagine, that they're being represented by a few people who are going out of their way to be disrespectful to these players. So I just want to throw that out there. D Ford doesn't choose to be hurt. D Ford isn't choosing to, not get on the field. Sometimes bodies break down, man. This sport is so tough. It's so violent. It's so physical. It's the cost of doing business in this game. So I just want to throw that out there. If you guys see it for whatever reason, let it be known, man. Don't let 49ers fans be portrayed in that light, because 49ers fans are fantastic. They're the most passionate, knowledgeable fan base in the entire sport. And it really sucks when a couple, bad apples make everyone look worse when they're sitting there in D Ford's mentions, calling him names, saying stuff like it irritates me that people don't treat these players like human beings, and they act like they choose to get hurt, and they act like these players choose not to get on the field. So I'll stop with my rant with that. I just think it's ridiculous, and it really sucks that it makes the fan base as a whole look worse when it's really just a small group of people collectively doing it. I think so too. I think his body's just kind of given out, and it's really unfortunate because he was a really good player. I wish him the speediest recovery. And another thing I'll end it on real quick too is these guys have families, man. Like, these guys want to be able to play with their kids and do things beyond just play football until their mid-30s. Like, there's a life to be lived after football, and I would support any player that's gonna get out and do. Like, Patrick Willis is my favorite football player of all time. I understood that Patrick Willis reached a point where he could not play football anymore because of what he was dealing with his injury. I think that it's totally justified that Patrick Willis doesn't want to be hamstrung for the rest of his life because he just decided, the fans wanted him to play football for a year or two longer. Like, those kind of decisions, as much as they may hurt in the moment, really are things that have my utmost support. And I would hope any true fan of the sport of football and the 49ers would too. Yeah, I think School could come back. I think School's a guy that they really liked. I think, that's the thing, is they have offensive line guys they like. They have McKivitz. They have some guys they've invested some capital into already. School is a guy that I think could play that swing tackle role potentially. Jalen Moore's still on the roster. Like, I think it'd be good to address it if there's some guys they like in the draft, but they're not, starved for offensive linemen right now. Like, it's not like this massive position of need, but I do think, John, that School is somebody that could definitely be a depth piece for them. Maybe even a practice squad guy. Like, the way they've altered these practice squad rules is being on the practice squad isn't the designation that it once was. Like, it's still, there's still a path to getting viable snaps by doing that. Hendricks thinks Jimmy will win the locker room if he's around by training camp. I don't think that matters at this point, to be honest. Maybe last year when it was close. I truly think Trey Lance is going to come out and surprise a lot of people. I think his physical ability is really special. And I think that the fact that he has, For those of you who may have missed it, it is on my channel. You can go and watch the video real quick. I got a chance to talk to Robert Griffin III for a little bit, and he knows a thing or two about being a physically gifted quarterback, going into a Shanahan system with high expectations. We talked a little bit on camera, and we talked a bit off camera. And to me, the thing that stood out the most was when he was talking about Trey Lance. He said, from everything I've heard, the mentality is there, meaning that this guy wants to work to get better. And he talked about how he has the IQ too. And these are all things that he has heard, being somebody connected in the league, being somebody who has that, networking around people that are seeing Trey Lance operate day to day. So as much as I think the physical gifts are really special, Trey Lance's mental ability is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think his cerebral ability is what's really going to separate him. And that's no disrespect to Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think when you have the physical gifts and you have the cerebral ability, look out, man. Like, you're going to be cooking with some fuel here pretty soon. I think that that's something to look forward to. Rye says she always thought the plan was for Banks to start when Trey started. Excited for him. Excited to see Kinlaw. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen it yet, Javon Kinlaw went on Brad Graham's show last week. Go check it out on the SF Niners. It was a fantastic interview. Kinlaw's story is really cool too. For those of you who don't know, I don't want to spend too much time sidetracked here talking about it, but it's a really cool story. And he's somebody who is easy to pull for and easy to want to see succeed at this level. So I'm excited to see what that interior defensive line looks like. And I think that's part of the reason why the 49ers were, able to let a guy like DJ Jones walk, a guy who I said last season was one of the 5 most important players on the team. You don't do that unless you feel like you have a viable contingency plan. And I think Javon Kinlaw will be that guy. As for the first part, I think that the plan with Aaron Banks was, hey, if they could get him on the field at right guard, great. He played left guard in college, and I think the 49ers knew that they were going to have a hard time re-signing Laken Tomlinson. And I think him being a Pro Bowl alternate and having the year he did made it even more difficult. We saw how much money he got from the Jets. I just think that was a move that was kind of foreshadowing what was going to happen, and they were planning ahead. So I think that as much as it may be about Trey Lance too, it was about getting some insurance should Laken Tomlinson not be around. And I think just moving Banks back to his natural position will definitely be the move going forward. Hendricks likes Jaquan Brisker at 61. Man, if Jaquan Brisker's still on the board, he's a safety out of Penn State, guys. Again, I'm going to get more into in-depth prospects, get some insights, get some discussion going with some people who are really putting in the time, grinding tape and scouting, and know their draft stuff really well. So if you're interested in that, like I said, like and subscribe to the channel, put notifications on. We're going to be doing these every day. And as the draft is coming up in a couple weeks, I will be there covering the draft for SB Nation. So if you guys are going to be in Vegas for the draft, definitely DM me on Twitter or whatever. It would be cool to link with as many of you guys as possible. But yes, back to Jaquan Brisker. If Jaquan Brisker's there at 61, if I'm John Lynch, I am rushing to the telephone. I am spamming the phone numbers to get that call in. Whoever's at the draft, I am sprinting to the podium with that draft card, because I don't think there's a chance he ends up at 61. But if he does, dude, he would be just absolutely perfect for this defense and would be a steal at 61. So if he's there, I would take him. CJ says edge has the most value at 61 for us. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of really good edge rushers in this class. And I think that that's probably going to be their best avenue to maximizing a player that will be, relatively high-end starter for them for a couple years to come, is if they are able to identify and come away with a solid edge player there. My thoughts on Brian Burns opposite of Nick Bosa would just be devastating. That'd be the best pass rushing duo in the league. And we have some pretty good pass rushing duos out there now. How realistic is it? I don't know. That's for those of you guys who don't know, that's Brad Graham's all-time dream right now is to get Brian Burns here. I like Burns a lot coming out. I never thought that he was a candidate. I thought, Bosa was kind of going to be the guy, but I thought that if the 49ers, moved back in that draft in 2019, he was somebody they would like. I know Brad's talked about it a bunch. Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers is phenomenal. He has the coldest face mask I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys have ever saw it, but he had a built-in visor with a Spider-Man face mask, covering his eyes on one of his helmets. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. So hard not to like the guy. All around good talent. He's got the drip. He's got the everything you could ask for in a complimentary edge player. He's the number 1 edge player. So if the 49ers ended up with him as a complimentary number 2 guy, sky's the limit. I just don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately, Eddie, but that's a great question. Make a Jimmy trade attractive other teams, restructure his contract, $10 million guaranteed with incentives. Jimmy would have to agree to that, though, and that's the thing. And I think the 49ers are at the point now where you would have to so this is the thing, Jerome, is that if a team's going to trade for Jimmy, they can negotiate that restructure and they can negotiate that guaranteed money with incentives and do all that, with the 49ers not taking on the risk of having to pay him guaranteed money. Right now, as much as they're saying they're not going to move on from him, and as much as they're saying they don't foresee that happening and they don't foresee this and that and all these things going on, realistically, they still have the power to move on from him and get rid of him because they don't have guaranteed money tied down to him. So I think the restructure makes a ton of sense, but they can go through that avenue. His agent and his representation can go through those channels and make that restructure happen. And the other team is taking on the brunt of the responsibility. The 49ers are just going to sit back and collect their draft picks for him if they do that. So it's a great thought. I just think the best way to do that would be to have the other team bear the brunt of responsibility when it comes to the restructure. Hey, maybe they do. Hey, South Carolina, if he's there, South Carolina, they really. I know Kingsley's a guy who is jumping around a lot of draft boards right now. A lot of people like him. The 49ers like their South Carolina players. We got Debo, we got Kinlaw on the team, so I could see that. I think that that's something to check out for sure. If you guys haven't seen Kingsley, definitely check him out. This is another good point from Hendricks. No respect to athletes in general because they get hurt is absurd. Like, I get it, man. Sometimes fans get frustrated with players and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you can voice your concerns without being disrespectful. There's players who I'm not a big fan of, and I don't think are very good personally. You're never going to catch me saying outlandishly disrespectful things about players because at the end of the day, they're human beings, man. And I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but I just think it would be cool if we were all a little bit more respectful to each other, athletes included. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell anybody else how to live their life. It just would be cool to see more often on social media rather than players getting tagged and getting hateful things thrown their way. I think it's ridiculous. Thank you, John. I appreciate everybody who supports that. Nicholas too. Thank you so much. And these guys don't choose to get hurt, man. I'm sorry. I'm catching up to some of these comments from a little bit ago, but I think that it's good. Thank you, Nicholas. I agree. Number one edge of this class. My number one edge in this class is probably Thibodeau. I think Thibodeau is just physically dominant. I think he's a guy that teams are going to end up overthinking like they did with Micah Parsons. And I think that it's a situation where if you just look at the player and you look at the ability, it's really hard for me to see somebody that I think is better. I do really like Jermaine Johnson though. So this is where it gets hard because I think Thibodeau's a guy that's a pure 3-down, can give you everything that you need in a base defense as well as rushing the passer. But if we're talking about like pure pass rushing guys, like Jermaine Johnson's really good, Ebikety's really good. It's hard, man. There's a lot of really good edge players in this class. Trayvon Walker's really good. Like there's a lot of really good. It's tough. It's a loaded class at edge. Maybe for a 6th-round pick, maybe they could go up a few spots. I don't know how, like maybe 3, 4, 5, something like that for their 6th. If they see a guy they really like, maybe they could make a pretty substantial leap if they were to offer up that pick at 105 that they have. So that's what I would be more keen on if it was me. If I'm going to make that move up, I'm going to make a big move up. And hey, maybe one of those edge guys or one of those safeties that they have high on their board manages to slide to the mid 40s, low 50s, and they can make that jump up. So I think that's one to definitely keep an eye on. Yes, he is. Brad is 1000% determined to get Burns. I've never seen somebody so determined to get a player that they're probably not going to get on their team. This is like when you see those like jersey swaps of like Patrick Mahomes or like LeBron James to like the Jaguars or the Thunder or something. Like it's probably never going to happen. But like Brad Graham is committed to the cause, so I agree there. Yeah, please, if you guys do, hey, if you hit the like button, it's greatly appreciated. Again, I'm just getting this channel up and running. I understand that it's going to take some time to build things up here, and I know it's like what's that saying? Like Rome wasn't built overnight. I get it. But any help with liking the video helps with the algorithm. Any sharing, subscriptions, all that stuff too. I really appreciate it. So thank you guys. Back to Karlaftis. He's a guy too that I think he's more technical than an athlete, and I think a lot of times that does translate into a solid player. I think he ended up being somebody kind of like Ryan Kerrigan, where maybe they're not, this perennial all-pro level player, but they're a solid starter in the league, contributing meaningful snaps for a good amount of time. And to me, like there's value in that. Like when people, it's so funny to me when people look at first round picks, it's almost like the bar now for most fans has been, well, if they're not a Pro Bowler, like you missed on this pick. Like if you get a viable NFL starter that's giving you consistent snaps at any round in the draft, to me, that's a success. Sure, maybe if you're picking number 1 overall, like that's not what you should be shooting for. You should be shooting for somebody that's going to be a game-changing player. But to me, that's where it changes a little bit. So I would say that Karlaftis is a guy. Brian Kerrigan would be my comparison. I think Kerrigan went to Purdue too, if I remember correctly. So he's somebody that I could see. He says he's only 22. LeBron to the Jaguars. Hey, man, LeBron, for those of you guys who don't know, LeBron James was like a phenomenal high school football player. Like he was like one of the best receivers in the state of Ohio. And Ohio football is no joke. Like they are about high school football there. So I'm not saying he would have been like a superstar, but it would have been really interesting to think about what LeBron James, a football player, could have been. I think those days have come and gone. If I remember correctly, Jerry Jones tried to get him to sign with the Cowboys when they had the lockout 10 years ago. I think Seattle made a push for it too. But I think if you took LeBron in his prime, I think LeBron would be a nightmare to match up with, especially, you know, he's 6'8", 240, whatever he is, and runs probably in the 4.5s, 4.4s, whatever. Now, not so much. Earlier in his career, probably did. That would have been really fun to watch. Unfortunately, we never got to see it. The edges, I think, dropping to 61, you know, I think you get guys like Nick Benito. You get guys like, I like Josh Paschal out of Kentucky. You know, I'm gonna do a couple mocks. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that. You can let me know if you would. I'm probably gonna do a couple live mocks where I'll have the screen up and I can, you know, let the board fall down how it will. There's 2 main sites that you guys probably already are aware of if you're into that stuff, Pro Football Network and PFF. I think PFF's is a little bit more accurate in terms of where players are probably going to end up going. I've done some PFN mocks where I'm drafting guys in the 5th round that I would be thrilled to get in the 3rd round, and I'd be shocked if we're there at that point, anywhere close to that. So I'll toy around with both. Maybe we'll do a couple mock draft streams and stuff like that. But I know like Benito's a guy that people really like. Pascal's a guy people really like. You know, it's hard to gauge where exactly they'll be when it comes to that point. I can share a couple of the mocks that I do have. I think I have some saved. Let me see if I can pull one up real quick. I'll tell you guys who I took at 61 when I did a mock before. Let's see. I did one too that was all quarterbacks. I don't know if anybody saw that, but I did one that was all quarterbacks. So the edges that I've been mocking a lot are like D'Angelo Malone out of Western Kentucky. He's a guy that I've been taking a bunch of times. I really like Tyreek Smith too out of Ohio State. He's a guy more towards the back end. At 61, it gets tough, man, because like I know a lot of people like Ebiketie. I don't think necessarily that Ebiketie is going to fall that far. And it just, again, it gets to a point where it's like, what are you looking for in that player? Like when I look at Paschal, I see a guy that I think could be a 3-down lineman and whose ability to defend the run is more impressive to me than his ability as a pass rusher. So that's where it gets super interesting. I definitely think that, let's see. Hold on, I have to get to this real quick. So yeah, so for Ed, I'll come back to that. We'll talk about that again more about edge guys that could be there. Because again, with a lot of these mocks, I've been focusing on trading down and trying to get more value out of 61 because like Benito is the guy I see. Drake Jackson's the other guy I see a bunch that will still kind of be in that range. I love Drake Jackson for what it's worth from USC. I think if he adds a little bit of weight to his frame, you get him cooking with a guy like Chris Kosaric. I think that's something that would be really interesting and cool to, potentially see the 49ers developing with that. But I wanted to get to this comment real quick because this is really cool. Eric is fantastic. Subscribe to Eric's channel if you guys haven't already seen his stuff. His stuff is great. He goes, Jordan, I've had an idea that I think could revolutionize football. I want a 6'10", 7'0" red zone threat to use on jump balls. Imagine like a Damian Jones out there. One of the most dominant football players I've ever seen in my life was when Jimmy Graham was at his peak with the New Orleans Saints. And he was this former basketball player that they would literally just throw 50-50 balls to. And he was a technician. He had good route running bag, good savvy, all that stuff. I am 100% on board with that. We saw Julius Thomas do the same thing, former basketball player, converted to tight end. Why not at this point? You get a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", that your only role is to go out there and catch jump balls. And if you get a quarterback like Joe Burrow, whose placement on those 50-50 balls is like immaculate, like I can see it happening. Because the reason why it doesn't, I think, is a lot of time when those guys get too tall, they lose a little bit of leverage. You always hear that saying, low man wins. So you're going to have a hard time blocking and doing some of the other things a tight end's asked to do. But man, if you think about it, like if you get it, like it's part of the reason why I think Calvin Johnson was so hard to stop on top. He was a physically athletic, just freak. But being 6'5" and running in the 4.3s and doing all that stuff, it was the wingspan and the size. So if you get a guy who's already going to have 7-8 inches, maybe even 9 on a corner that's guarding them or a safety that's guarding them, like that'd be really fun to think about. So I'm definitely with you there. What is up, Jesus? Appreciate you coming by, dude. Thank you for stopping by. I think they're more likely to trade back than trade up, to be honest. I think if the guy that they really like isn't there and a team's willing to move a pick or two here or there to move up to 61, then I think that's more likely, to be honest. I don't know that the 49ers are going to be eager to move up, but it depends where the value is, because this is a pretty deep draft, and maybe some of those picks they have in the 5th round, in the 6th round, they have 3 7th rounders. I personally don't think 7th round picks are worth anything. When you're talking about trades, I don't think they move the needle enough, but I do think that it's more likely that they would trade back to maybe the late 60s, early 70s than it would be that they trade up. But again, I could be wrong. Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what they did get for moving back 5 spots in the 2nd round. I'm trying to remember. I can look that up, but I think that I don't remember off the top of my head, Nicholas. I'm so sorry about that. John likes Derek Deese at tight end. LeBron and Tebow tight end competition would have been epic. It would have been. Appreciate you coming by, dude. Yeah, if Jason's doing sprint right option, you guys are probably going to want to get over there pretty soon. I'm going to be wrapping this up soon too, so I definitely don't blame anybody for running over there. Appreciate it. The more likes, the more subscriptions. I'm getting there in terms of watch hours. I'm trying to get the subscriptions up. Any help is appreciated, guys, because then I will be able to get monetized and really grow this channel. But again, this is just the beginning. We're having some fun. So we're a little over an hour now. Okay, the picks they got, they traded for Sermon. Thank you, Lalo. Appreciate that, which again was just I would have never done that personally. I did not like that move. The guys I like Calvin Austin. I like Tyquan Thornton. I think that they might go a little bit sooner than the 49ers can justify taking a receiver. So that's where it's going to get really hard. But those are the 2 guys I like a lot. Thornton out of Baylor ran in the 4.2s. The guy's fast as just can be. He is ridiculous. So I like him a lot. But I think he still has a little bit of room to grow as a receiver going to the next level. So maybe the 49ers are a good team for a player like that, where they can develop a little bit. They can get that repertoire going. So that's who I would look at. So that's it. I'm caught up with the comments. If you guys have any other questions, anything while I'm still here, I'm happy to answer them. Other than that, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I will be doing one again tomorrow and the next day. Jesus likes Danny Gray. Again, I'm going to be doing streams every day, so I appreciate any likes, subscriptions, sharing the videos and stuff. I'm going to try to do my best to incorporate a time like this in all these videos where we can talk. You guys can share your thoughts, and I can bounce back off of some of your ideas, especially as we're getting into draft content and stuff like that. Last year, I was so immersed in draft stuff because the 49ers season was pretty much done halfway through. And I was like, all right, well, it's time to start focusing on the draft in the future. Admittedly, this year, I've been so busy writing about the playoffs, getting ready for the combine, doing these other things that I'm so far behind on my draft stuff that there's a good chance that a lot of you guys are farther along than I am. So I'd love to hear some of your prospects, why you like some of these guys. So we'll talk about it a bit. I will be doing a mock draft. Maybe I'll do one tomorrow. I might have something that I have to do tomorrow. That's an interview I'm working on. So if I do, I'll post whatever clips I get from it. I think you guys will really like that one. It'll be a fun one. Again, I'm just working out the details on it. But if that's it, then I probably will go ahead and put a bow on this, wrap it up. And again, Jason's doing sprint right option. I believe Andrew's there as well. I would hope so, that he's not just doing it solo. So I imagine if you guys are here, you're already part of the SRO and the spicy squad or whatever Jason's calling his membership now. So definitely head on over there and go check out what those guys are doing. I know that's what I'm going to do. It's Hey, tomorrow, don't worry, Jose. I went a little bit early, dude. Tomorrow, I'm gonna do it more towards probably the evening time. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot where I know a lot of people are on the East Coast. I'm trying to get it so I can fit everybody in. Eric likes Danny Gray too. Oh, another guy I'll throw out there that Eric gave to me that I watched during the combine is Romeo Doubs out of Nevada. Would be a great pickup for the 49ers. I think he's a much better route runner than he gets credit for, and I think he's a great downfield threat. So Romeo Doubs is a guy that I think would be a great target if they're able to bring him in. And Eric was the one who suggested that I check him out and watch. So I want to give Eric the credit for that. Don, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, that's the thing. It wouldn't be possible without any of you guys. And hey, maybe it never grows into something huge. Maybe it does. Regardless of it, I am so grateful for everybody who's been here from the beginning and for everybody who's supported my content before I got on YouTube. And, I'm still writing articles for Niners Nation every day. I'm trying to find a balance of doing both. It's a lot harder than I expected, but, we'll find a way to make it work. So I appreciate you, John. Thank you so much for coming by. Lalo, appreciate you as always. Mariah, thank you so much. And yeah, Danny Gray, that's a name I'm going to have to go check out. So I'm going to go get on that. I'm going to go start watching some film. I'm going to have Sprint Right Option on as well. If you guys are still hanging out looking for 49ers content, go watch Sprint Right Option right now. I guarantee you it's a fantastic show and you're not going to want to miss out on that. Dawson, what is up, dude? Appreciate you so much. So I'm going to get out of here. I got to go watch Andrew and Jason. So I will talk to you guys later.